Well, after swinging around a little bit further, I think we're up here. Let me mark that. Drew Plague, Northampton, Oxford. Now, Bourchier had been working his way up through Oxford. He's dead now. Not automatically. You roll for plagues now to see if the leader dies. But that means the Archbishop of Canterbury goes into the Chancery, and with it the loss of Canterbury itself. Because if you hold... This was something I had to kind of make up as a rule. If you hold a city or something and you have the card for it and you lose it, you lose the city. But if somebody else holds it, they don't. Alright, and let's see. He's just been killed by plague, so he has a chance of coming back to the player's hand. He does not, so he goes under the deck. And we're kind of getting to the point where this deck is running out. There's not a lot left to hand out. And players will be in the mood of, well, all right, I have to shake things up a little bit here. I have to do something to change things. Quite long periods of the game, you know, a few rounds around or whatever, happen without anybody making a move, basically, at times. You're just drawing for cards. But once you have your hand and you see what you've got, well, usually one player or another can say, I can get an advantage by doing something. Of course, there's a lot of randomness in here because, like, the Duke of Somerset was sieging Carlisle. He got pulled off of it, and now he's sieging it again. Just like we had over here where the siege of Coventry ended. Lost the spot somewhere up here. I better... Well, I'm not going to remember where exactly. I put a die there, but then I needed the dice to roll. A battle occurred between Holland and his Scots, which he has to discard after the battle, and the forces of King Henry, led by the Earl of Richmond there, Greystoke. Now, because Holland's one big powerful guy, he can shift around and take on a column that's weaker and beat it up, although the full force of Henry's force is able to get a slight advantage on him. What we've seen from that is a couple of captures by Holland of Shrewsbury and Audley, who barely counts, but now things are going to get ugly. But we also saw George, Duke of Clarence killed in the battle. And, well, we're going to continue. Now, here's the problem. One thing that's not clear is when you can add troops in a card. My play of the game has always been you can add them when you like. And I've got a couple of titles here that I was planning on handing out to Grey and Audley, but they didn't help. But that's, to me, an allowable function. You can certainly do it right before the battle. It's whether in the midst of an advanced battle you can do that, and I play that you can, but there's something kind of questionable about it. But it's like additional troops. That weird noise is someone playing with a little electric car, I think. Okay. Anyway, I'll continue the battle. I don't see it going very. Let's see what we got here. We got 100 and Jesus, that's annoying. 180. Facing Greystoke and Grey, 110, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. So he's going to have to assign one of those titles just to get to a majority victory. And then there's going to be a shift against him for defender and in his favor for having the royal leader. And that's kind of cute. Annoying but cute. Alright, and I think it's going to be their attack. Anyway, I'll draw the attack, see if we get it. No, but there's a possibility of deaths going on. Well, Holland pulled it off. His larger force, now he loses his Scots mercenaries, but he managed, and should have done this before, to throw his Scots archers in to counter the additional troops there. That gave him the majority again. And remember, it's tied off. Well, he captured everyone. And now he has Henry of Lancaster. He gets the Plantagenet card, along with it Windsor. he might as well set up. There's no real harm to that. And he gets to dispose of Greystoke as he wishes. That's going to be kind of an interesting question. Again, we go to that, hey, can we ransom you off? Now, Holland actually was safe, believe it or not. He had a King's Pardon card. He would have lost George, who he did lose in the battle, but he could have saved his big leader. So he wouldn't have had to give as big a ransom, and probably would have ended up having to play that card. But we'll see what kind of ransom Greystoke's faction can manage. Holland's kind of unhappy about it. He's going to get the card draw, and we'll see where that goes. Yeah, Holland pretty much said the hell with you and wiped out his entire faction. He managed to keep the one thing he could keep, which was the Earl of Shrewsbury on a lucky roll. But the rest of everything, it's all gone. He doesn't exist anymore, basically. And, you know, in some ways, it's sometimes very hard to recover from something like that. And sometimes I just say, well, if it's at the end game of the game, somebody will just give up if they're in that position. Because really the only position they can face anymore is kind of as a spoiler or tagging around hoping to gain something somewhere. But now we have a new power and it's actually his turn. Well, we got another big battle happening here with Holland and Henry VI, and he's being faced this time by Richard of, King Richard, and Berkeley's forces here. Both sides have been boosted to their maximum, basically, that they have. What we have here is 80, 90, and 60, 150, 190, 290 versus 50, 100, 150, 230. Both have leadership. The defender has a slight advantage for that. So 230 divided by 290. Looks like we don't quite, looks like we barely break the 5 to 4 odds. I've been doing this wrong. It should be below 0.8, right? Yeah, I think so. 4 divided by 5. Let me see. Yeah, it should be below 0.8. Oh, well, I've been kind of cheating, but who knows? You know, this combat system's so kind of wacky, just because of the odds calculations and then the modifiers that you have afterwards. So let's see. We actually have 5 to 4 now, with a shift in favor of the defender, which I think brings it to majority. I'm not sure. And the attacker gets to do first swing. Well, let's see what he gets. We already checked to see that. Now, this would have been an interesting chart. This can randomly kill a royal. It doesn't do anything, and I'll start rolling casualties, and we'll see how this all turns out. Well, it ended up going badly anyway. Holland ended up getting killed in the battle, which means that we got poor Duke of Buckingham here with only 80 strength points. Now, he's not going to attack back, but he's got problems here, no way out, and he's facing whatever that full 280 or whatever it is. Well, they couldn't come to a deal. Buckingham offered a few mercenaries as kind of the, hey, this is what I'd give you. I've got to look through here because some of these cities and stuff go away. And that was unacceptable. So he played a King's Pardon instead. That prevents him from being executed. He's really the best noble they have left. Over here. Here's what's weird. The Duke of Lancaster is now on his side briefly. He tried to kill Henry, but he didn't make the right die roll. He's got a couple of turns to succeed in doing it. And then I'm not sure what happens. I don't know if he has to try to kill Richard as well. They're both crowned, and that could cause some issues. But, again, one of those kind of, hey, it's kind of cool for the story to have happen, but you don't really want it in your design. As a player, you're disturbed by it. Anyway, I guess I draw a card and end my turn, and we've got, ooh, that's the Chancellor. We've got the situation where we're going to have to reshuffle that deck, and I also have to worry about the blue things that have been lost. As we push around, we've come to a kind of interesting situation. The Earl of Warwick has succeeded in his siege, and he has Margaret and Edward. He doesn't want to kill either until he finds out what's going on here with Berkeley, and Berkeley should probably have his dudes with him. Berkeley wanted to kill Henry, but maybe that's not really the case now. Now, whichever one dies, Warwick wants to be supporting the other side. So if somehow Richard dies, he wants to make sure that he's holding Edward, because Edward is, I believe, number 2 on the list. Somewhere or another. Yeah, but I need the advanced game one. Yeah, Edward's number 2. Edmund of Rutland is number 3 up there. So he's got the 2 number 2s in his hand. Margaret is number 2 on the as regent on the Lancaster side, and it just puts you in kind of this position that's kind of interesting. Now we've got one player almost wiped out, another one largely knocked out, and a couple who are in not terribly good shape. And then we've got the 2 players with the Royals who are sort of the more powerful. I think the Earl of Warwick is the stronger hand, and you could have questioned why he didn't march up and attack Berkeley here. Well, because he was fixated on something else. He's got the more powerful hand, I think, right now, and probably should have. After a significant amount of time going around, I think it's been 2 rounds. No, it's got to be the first one. Henry's been executed. That handed the Lancastrian family troops over to Warwick's faction. He hasn't killed Edward yet, but he's planning on it. He's got to decide. He's got to do it next turn. He's got a couple of issues here. He doesn't have a bishop, so he can't crown not Margaret, but declare her regent, which is kind of a weird situation. What do you need a bishop, pair of bishops for that? And we're kind of at there's 2 powers in the game right now. One power is the Yorkist side under Berkeley, and not a lot more. And they have over here Richard of Gloucester over in Calais as their backup that they're planning on getting. They set sail with the ship of Whitby, and I think they've got, of all people, Holland's heir ready to take sail and at least take possession of the air. At the same time, they could also go grab Edmund of Rutland, which is probably more interesting to them. The other players are in a somewhat less interesting position. And the question that comes for them is, do they want to ally with the Yorkists in a hope of defeating the Lancastrians? And if so, what really happens? How are you going to divide up the spoils, etc., if there's some great battle? Nobody's got a lot of troops, and even if the entire Yorkist faction got together, it looks like the Lancastrians have a decent amount of power right now. So it's going to be tough to convince anybody that alliance is a good one right away. If it doesn't have a clear purpose other than let's stack together and see if we can get, a lucky shot. And anyway, the Lancastrians have laid siege here to Kenilworth, and I'm going to load this one up because I think we're at a kind of nice little inflection point here.